All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live for another Saturday morning crime catch-up throughout the week. We've got some topics for you folks, and I lined them all up already. But before we jump into that, you know what to do. If you're a returning customer, a returning viewer, and you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you hit that subscribe. We're only getting about a 10% return right now. We want to improve that. And then if there's anything that you want to see or comment on, definitely comment down below, and we'll get through the questions. Couple of things that I wanted to hit on. We did have quite a few videos go out in the past 2 weeks. We had Henry Dinkins go out yesterday. That was a local case to Davenport, Iowa. The child predator, child killer sleepover, Henry Dinkins. So definitely watch that video. And then Lexi Tyler did her first video that we launched this morning, which had to do with Ruby Frankie. And I thought that was a pretty good video. We spent a lot of time working on that, and it's going to be her first video ever. So make sure you leave a comment for her. Let her know how she can improve and what went really well, what might not have went really well. I know she's looking forward to hearing some of those comments. She was up pretty late last night working on some of that stuff. So that being said, let's jump into it. I've got 3 topics today, and I'm actually going to add a 4th. So we're going to hit Nick Carter real quick and then go over the Ashton and Mila updates. And then I do want to talk about Amie Harwick. That's a case that I'm thinking about making a video on, but I haven't done a lot of research, so I thought I would use that opportunity to kind of show you folks what that research might look like, and then some of the stuff that happens behind the scenes. And then we'll talk a little bit about Lex as well. And then I actually just seen an update for the Koberger trial with some of the families. So we'll watch that one together. It's about a 5-minute clip. I have not watched it, so we'll be watching it together. In the meantime, for anybody that comes in, if you've got any questions, definitely leave a comment down below and I will answer those questions. Or if there's any kind of research that I'm not hitting, especially with the Amie Harwick case, and we'll talk about where I need some help on that one, definitely leave some stuff down below. I also left my door open today, so there might be some background noise, but we did have some requests for some folks to see some of the puppies, and I've got Cooper laying beside me right now, or laying on the bed, and that's really, it's technically Cooper's bed. He doesn't like to have any other puppies on the bed. He kind of gets upset. Like one of the comments, I think it was Queen Bee, said that we are Wyme enablers. She'd be absolutely correct. We definitely enable Cooper, so you may see the dogs come in and out. If it gets too loud, I'll shut the door, but definitely we'll try to get Max in here since he's the mascot of the channel, and then we have our German Shepherd, Rue, who may come in as well. I let them walk around the house freely, so if they come in, they come in. If they don't, that'll be up to them. Cooper, you'll see kind of move around, but Cooper spends the most time in here. He likes the video editing, and he likes just chilling in the background. And sometimes you see him in my videos. If you ever notice, you'll see some movement. Typically, you'll see it, you know, kind of, I think that's the side right there. You'll see him right back in there, or you'll see when I cut some of the videos, he's there and then he's not there. So you'll notice that depending on how much he's moving around. So you might see Cooper. Or if we give him treats, they'll all move around at that point. So just some things to think about. So first and foremost, I'm just going to do a transition here so we can look at the screen. I want to make sure that I have my webcam on, so I'm going to transition this to my screen right here. And we're just going to start with Nick Carter and kind of look at the video that I put out this week. I knew when I put out this video there was going to be people on both sides of the aisle with the Nick Carter allegations. Keep in mind, I want to be very specific. I didn't come out and say that I thought Nick Carter was guilty, and I didn't come out and say that I thought he was not guilty. I think at this point it really doesn't matter what I think. I'm not going to be a juror on the case by any means. My intent behind that is to get the information out there for sure, but when you have a powerful celebrity like Nick Carter, they have a huge media machine that can essentially downplay any allegations that are going on. So it's important that people get their voice heard. And yes, if it comes back that Nick Carter wasn't guilty, then the females that brought these allegations should be prosecuted at the fullest extent of the law. Now, if Nick Carter is guilty, those victims should have their voices heard. So I want to start with that because I think that, well, one, there was a lot of comments on that video, and I thought that was awesome. By the way, I love when people engage. Two, all the comments were fair. So I want to make sure that we get that out there. I think that there was a lot of good back and forth with these comments. They were very respectful in the views and the different perspectives and the feedback in the comments. So I want to start there. So I thank everybody for that. And I do appreciate people that take the time to be able to come in and engage in the comments and do it in a very respectful way. And I felt that with the Nick Carter video, this is exactly what we're looking for in a community. I don't always have to agree with folks, but I will challenge the status quo. So, if somebody came in and said, yeah, he's 100% guilty, I would come back with some of the stuff that, might show that maybe he's not guilty. The idea is to try to stay as neutral as possible. But sometimes that can sway one way or another. Sometimes biases can check in. And in this case, I was very intentional on making sure that the potential victims have a voice and that their side of the story is heard. Now, during that, there was some things that didn't get released out in the video. There was some things that I did record that I didn't put out in the video. So I'll start with a couple of those just to kind of clarify a little bit. And then there was some things that wasn't and didn't come out in the video that I want to hit right here that I think are very valid points. Now, at this point, I think the case could go either way. I think that with all the evidence that we see, I think it's just a very small portion of what you're going to see in court from either the defense or the prosecution, because we know both teams are going to be holding on to information that they think is either going to find Nick guilty, or if you're on the defense team, going to find Nick not guilty. And this is just strategy. This is something that most teams, whether they're the prosecution or the defense, are going to do, so that way it comes out in court and a potential jury is going to see that for the first time, and then that way their case is not being tried in public opinion, or kind of like what we're doing here, talking about it on a true crime YouTube. So just some things to think about there. I thought this was pretty important. How has Carter responded to the allegation? So I did have a portion in my video that I had to take out, and I didn't think it was as big as it was, but I basically said, Nick Carter countersues Ruth and then countersues Melissa. The problem was when I said it in the video, it didn't make sense because I queue up the video with the lawyer and I was really going after the high-powered attorney that's in court going after the defamation portion of Nick Carter's case. And that's the countersuit where he's suing for defamation. And they get a huge win there, right? The judge says that he can proceed with his countersuit, right? Which is a big win. Doesn't mean that he won the court case, just means he can continue to proceed, which is a huge win in a defamation case, especially when you're a celebrity. There's no doubt there. I had to remove that piece just because I start talking about Ruth, but I jump to the second victim, essentially, right? And in that case, I'm going back and forth between Melissa and Shannon, or who I call Ruth. And essentially, it just didn't make sense. So I cut that piece out. I got called out on it right away, and rightfully so. I went back, and I still have that in the video, so I could go back to YouTube and undo that. I just think that the way that I presented it was a little bit confusing to the user, but at the same time, I understand not having that in there could show some bias against this case as well. But I do want to restate, at this point, I don't have an opinion on whether I think Nick Carter is guilty or not guilty, but again, I don't think that potential victims, and I call them potential because it hasn't been proved in court yet, should ever be silenced. It's hard enough for females to come forward when things like this happen as is, and I think we should take all claims seriously. And if for some reason we find out that their claims are false, they should be prosecuted to the fullest length of the law, like I've already stated. So on either side, the law should come in and make sure that either one, if Nick is found to be a rapist, that he can never rape again, or if these potential victims like Melissa and Shannon Ruth come out and they are lying, then they should be also put away for the same amount of time that Nick would have been put away if he was found guilty, and then they should pay their reparations. So all of that stuff is basically the point that I'm trying to get to on that video. But there was a lot of good points that were made in the comments, and I do appreciate that because it does make you go back and look at some of the cases and also find some stuff. So that's the Nick Carter piece. If you want to see what the video is all about, it was a pretty long video. I put a lot of time into it, and for some folks out there, some of these videos could go on 40, 50, 60 minutes. And sometimes we record that long. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit, but sometimes we record so much information that we've just got to cut a lot of information. And I'll be honest, sometimes I get it wrong. Sometimes I cut the wrong things, and sometimes I wish I would have left things in there. And sometimes there's things that I leave in there that I wish I would have cut out, or you'll see that I make a mistake with some of the wording. So it happens. All right. Ashton and Mila. Okay, so this one was huge. I want to shout out, no context, whatever. I totally got this one wrong. So when I read through it and I was doing my research on this, I was under the impression that the letter was sent prior to the verdict. I was under the impression, and the way that I read it was that the letters were sent to try to influence the character of Danny Masterson and basically say that he didn't do this. And that's the way that I read it from the character letter. And it says it right in the letter, and I missed that part, and I read the letter, and I overlooked it. But basically, I mean, it states it right in there, right? He has been found guilty, and now we're going to give you a character witness, and basically, he was a role model and all of these things. Once I kind of read that and reread that, I should have probably done that before I made the video on it. The point that I was trying to make more so than the letter itself was, how do celebrities get away with this all the time? Is it money? Is it fame? There's still people that don't believe that Danny Masterson's guilty, even though he went through a court of law. And I'll be very clear on this. He was found guilty. I think he's guilty. Plain and simple. There's no ambiguity there. There's no playing on both sides of the fence or trying to get engagement out of the community based off of that. It literally is, he was found guilty, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts on that from my opinion or perspective. What I found that was very interesting, because I was a huge fan of Ashton Kutcher, not only for his work that he did on that 70s show and some of the movies he did. Oh, look, here comes our Dobie. You can say hi. You can say hi, Max. Come here. Here he comes. He's going to come say hi. Not only for the work that he did as an actor, but really for the work that he did with Thorn and really highlighting some of the potential struggles that child sex trafficking would bring, and to really highlight that with the authorities and go in front of the government and say his piece. Like, that really showed me, like, his character was huge, right? The letter, it wasn't it. I think that anybody that goes through this, you can definitely be supportive of your friend. And what I mean by that is, once you find out, it's probably devastating for them to understand that their friend that they've known for so long was capable of doing what he was found guilty of doing. And I understand that, right? Because they probably didn't see the evil side of Danny Masterson. Now, that's no excuse, and I'm not saying that that's an excuse to write a letter, but hear me out on this one. Now, if it was my friend, I would want my friend to get some help, especially if I've been friends with them for 20 or 30 years. And I think that if they were going to write a letter, that's probably what the letter should have contained. We acknowledge that Danny Masterson's guilty. We acknowledge that our friend that we've known for 20 or 30 years had an evil side to them that we were unaware of. Or maybe, like some of the rumors are saying, maybe they were aware of it and that's why they wrote the letter. I don't know, and I'm not going to speculate on that, but that's how the letter I would have written. And that letter would have been very specific in the help that I think my friend should have gotten. So, for example, with Ashton and Mila, it should have said something like, Danny Masterson has shown some good qualities, and with the time spent in jail, right, because he's not up for parole for 30 years, we would like to see that Danny Masterson enrolls in some programs that could help potentially have him overcome some of the things that are character flaws that we see out of this person, right? And you would say it much more graceful, but basically what you're asking for is that Danny Masterson gets some time spent with doctors and really gets to reflect on what he did and come around to understanding the potential harm that he did to these victims and the life that they're going to lead after what he has done to them and what they've led up until this point. Now, those would have been all good points that you would have heard in a letter that I would have been like, okay, I understand that they're trying to support their friend, all while acknowledging their friend did something bad, their friend got caught, and now their friend is going to spend time in jail. And I think they could have mentioned in that letter as well, just like they did in the apology, that they're not trying to downplay the potential harm that was caused to the victims from their friend Danny Masterson, and acknowledge the potential harm that they could potentially pose by writing the letter. Now, there's another piece that I think gets added into this. They are very rich and famous. They're role models for people. That in itself would tell me that they should have refrained from doing this because of their status, right? I think that even though if they wanted to support their friends, I think they could have supported Danny Masterson in a different way, and they could have done it in a way that was going to be beneficial to him, that would keep them out of the limelight and wouldn't make the victims feel that they were being alienated by two more megastars. So that, I think, is what the issue with Ashton and Mila is. And, you know, to this point, there's a lot of respect that's lost there. And I don't know if it'll ever be gained again. For me, I had to stew on that for quite some time and start thinking through, like, I get it. If one of my friends was, if I found that they were evil and I didn't know that for 20 years, you know, it would be a surprise to me too. I'd be in shock and I would want them to get help. Again, I wouldn't want to go around saying that that person was a role model because we see the behavior that they committed or the behavior that they partook in. I don't know if that's really a word. And I would think I would want to distance myself from that, right? Again, everybody deserves help. There's no doubt about it. And everybody deserves a second chance. Now, that being said, everybody deserves a second chance after they serve the sentence for the crime that they were found guilty of. So my point is after 30 years, if Danny Masterson comes around full circle, can admit what he did and understand the scope of harm that he did to those victims, he can apologize to the victims, get their forgiveness, then, you know, he potentially could deserve a second chance. Now, there's a lot of stuff that goes with that, obviously, and it should never be given. That all has to be earned, and Danny Masterson is going to have to show how is he going to earn that. And that, I think, could warrant some support. So I want to hear from you folks. What do you think? Do you think that the apology was sincere? Go watch the video, right? I think I lay out a lot of the information in there. We do watch the video together. I do put some points in there, but I want to hear from you folks. What did you think? Do you think it's just another bunch of celebrities that are trying to get off, or that they have big egos and think that they're larger than life, like I said with Nick Carter? And yes, that's a play on the song. I know one person did figure that out, which is great. Or do you think that the ego is just so big that, hey, we'll do what we want, we'll get off because we have so much support, and a lot of our fans just don't believe that this could be true? So I'll leave that one up to you. Okay, the last thing I wanted to do, actually, before we do that, let's watch the Kohberger video together. I wasn't going to do this today, but I thought this was a good clip. Now, keep in mind, it's a 5-minute clip, so bear with me. I haven't watched this clip, so I don't know what we're going to find in here. I literally was going to watch it this morning, but I said, you know what, let's watch it on stream with everybody, since the Kohberger case has been the most interesting to me. It's the one that it's making me go back and forth so much based off of the evidence, based off of what we're hearing, based off of the lack of smoking gun evidence that we see in the case. It's made me really research the genealogy, DNA, 23andMe, Ancestry.com, and really kind of dig into that stuff. So it's been a very interesting case. So this is going to share some details to 48 Hours. Might not be that interesting, but let's watch it together. Let's see what happens here.
This week, 48 Hours explores details of the night of the Idaho student murders. Correspondent Peter Van Sant spoke with two of the victims' families, one speaking out for the very first time, and one providing new details about their daughter's fight for her life.
It's been a long and painful journey for the families of Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, the 4 University of Idaho students who were stabbed to death in the pre-dawn hours of November 13, 2022.
Do you ever dream of your sister?
Yeah, I've had some dreams of her. Just gives me some peace knowing that I know she's okay.
Xana Kernodle's sister Jasmine and father Jeffrey are speaking out for the first time since Xana's murder.
This happened, you know? What do? You can't do a damn thing.
Everybody's going to work, and you look out the window, and there's kids running down the street laughing, and you're just like, how can you be out there playing? My daughter's dead.
On the night of the murders, Christy and Steve Gonsalves' daughter Kaylee was in the same bed as her childhood friend, Maddie Mogan. The Gonsalveses say coroner Kathy Mabbitt told them before a gag order, the killer attacked Maddie first, then moved on to Kaylee.
There's evidence to show that she awakened and tried to get out of that situation.
They say she cried out, and her wounds show she fought for her life.
The way the bed was set up is what she was trapped.
Xana also fought back. According to her father, she had severe defensive wounds.
She went down fighting.
I believe so. It's upsetting to think about.
She was always a very strong person.
A judge has entered a plea of not guilty on Bryan Kohberger's behalf, but he is not the person the families want us to remember.
He's not important, other than what he did and being held accountable. I'll be here to keep reminding people who these victims are.
So Peter is joining us now. And
so I'm going to stop that there. A couple of things that I think with this one here is the prosecution has to get this right, because if the prosecution doesn't get this right, there's a good chance that Bryan Kohberger could get out on appeal, right? And I've said it in my previous videos. I think that Bryan Kohberger is guilty. There's no question about it. And I typically don't do that before trial. However, there is some holes in the prosecution's case so far, and this is before they go to court. So there's a lot of things that they're probably sitting on that I think the 5 areas that they need to prove, they might have a hard time proving that. And if it all comes down to the DNA genealogy, then that could get overturned in a few years, because the court system just started using that in 2018, and there's some controversy around it, right? Because basically what they're doing is triangulating a suspect based off of people that have used things like 23andMe and Ancestry.com, and how good is the data, right? Because the DNA is essentially sent in by individuals, and there's just a lot of things that are going on. I won't get too far into it, but there's a lot of things that are going on there that I think potentially could overturn many cases in, say, 10 or 15 years, right? Like we've seen in the past. So that's pretty sad. That one was actually a pretty sad video. I didn't watch it before, like I stated, and it'll be interesting to see. I do have a Kohberger video coming out next week, kind of highlighting. I wasn't extremely happy with my last Kohberger video. I felt like I had the right points, but I didn't land the message correctly. So I don't want to say I redid it, because there's new stuff in there, but I kind of reformatted it and reformulated, and then was a little bit more specific. So you'll have to check that out next week. It is on cue for that. So, all right, the last thing that I want to jump into, and this might get a little boring for you folks, so I will cue it up. I was going to talk a little bit about YouTube, a little bit about the channel, and a little bit about behind the scenes of what I do, and kind of give you a look into how I come up with video ideas, and kind of how I put together the infrastructure. So we're going to do a little bit of that today. I'm going to start off just by talking about Lexi. So Lexi's my daughter. She has been helping with the channel for quite some time. Now, she does basic stuff like helps with the room, like you see the flags up. She helps with creating some of the logos. She helped me with the thumbnails and rebranding some of the thumbnails. Right now, because I've been asking for help, because it's been pretty much a solo operation up until this point, there's a lot of work that happens with videos. So a lot of the times, you know, when I'm doing research, I'll spend anywhere from 5 to 10 hours researching a topic. That sounds like a lot, but it's really not, because there's a lot of details that go on. And then I'll record. Oh, there you see the Coop dog. Hey, Coop. So I'll record typically for a 10-minute video. I will usually have 25 to 30 minutes of video, and then we'll have to go through and cut that down to bring you 10 minutes of video that's going to try to keep you engaged. Now with YouTube, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. There's a little bit of luck that goes into it, but for each one of the videos to get out to as many people as possible, there's things that have to happen, and they have to align with the stars. So first and foremost is the title. You'll see that I changed the titles quite a bit because it's all dependent on how many people are clicking on that title. So it's got to be engaging, but it can't be too long because the SEO, which is search engine optimization, has to be intact. So you'll see some of the hashtags that are there, and you want it to be small enough where people type in 1 or 2 words, they're going to be able to find your video. Now, right now, the issue that I'm having is people trying to find my channel because I changed it to TrueCrime with a K. I thought that was going to bring things up, but it's hard to find my channel. So we're working on a few names right now. Lexi had come up with the 49%, which is 49% of murders don't get solved. I think that's pretty good, so we might call it 49% or the voice of the 49. So we're working through some of those, and once we rebrand that, we'll get that part of the logo, and we'll rebrand the channel to that. The second thing is the thumbnail. So typically what I'll do is I'll make 2 or 3 thumbnails and have them on cue so that way I can change them out. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just got to remake them as we go. But the idea is we want to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 7% click rate, which means for every 100 people that thumbnail goes in front of, we want to get 5 or 6 people to actually click on the thumbnail and watch the video. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but to be successful, you got to be at 4%. To have a video really do well, you want to be at the 7 or 8%. So my Tiffany Gomas video that first came out, that did right around 7 or 8%, and we saw that the engagement on that was about 4 minutes long, and we just hit almost 4,200 views, so 4,100 and some change. So that hit very well, and then there was a lot of likes and a lot of comments that came out of that video. So what we're trying to do is engage our community more, so that way, you know, we encourage them to leave some comments and hit those likes because it gets it out to more people. So if all those stars align, then we start getting more views. Now, in some cases, some of those stars will align, and we'll have thumbnails that do very well. We'll have videos that, you know, we'll see 7 or 8 minutes of engagement, and then a lot of likes and a lot of comments, and they'll die down pretty fast, right? So that happens. So that's where the luck comes in, because basically what's happening at that point is that YouTube is saying, hey, we're going to put this out in front of so many people. So we want to make sure that the video that gets out to a lot of people has a lot of engagement and a lot of people are interested. So on my channel, a lot of folks have been asking for cases that aren't as popular. So we've got to go through and pepper in cases like Henry Dinkins, which doesn't really have national attention. And it's important to us, but we know that video is probably not going to do as well. Case in point, I launched that video yesterday during prime time. We've got 12 views on it so far. Watching some of the other bigger channels, even they, you know, they'll get into the thousands just because they have thousands of subscribers, and the video is not going to do as well just because it's more of a local case. We're going to continue to do those because the intent of the channel is to grow the channel and to start bringing more visibility to some of those smaller cases. But in order to do so, we've got to do bigger cases to gain more subscribers, to gain more traction, ultimately to gain more views, and hopefully to get more feedback for the community and build a community that is okay with providing their opinion, providing their perspective, and ultimately providing the feedback to make the channel better. So those are all things that go into a video. An example was Lexi did her first video last night, which is going to be Ruby Frankie, which you saw. I launched it this morning at 8 a.m. So give Lexi some support. It was her very first video. She was a little nervous. She spent a couple of hours videotaping, which is great. We had ultimately, I think it was 40 minutes of footage that we got down to 16 minutes. A lot of stuff we had to throw on the cutting room floor. So for anybody that's been around video, they used to actually cut film, and that would end up on the cutting room floor. So that's where that statement comes from. And she really got to see how difficult it is to actually do some of the stuff on the back end. So she cut a lot of this video on her own. I was showing her some stuff in Adobe, showing her how to do some hard cuts, add some pictures in there, and ultimately add the 911 call. And I thought Lexi did very good for her first video. We're going to try to get her to do more videos because she'll become more comfortable behind the camera. But I was really proud. She did a lot of homework, and she really did her framework and wrote down what her framework looked like and did it kind of in a brainstorming fashion. And then on her tablet, she had a lot of information that was ready to go. So based off of all of that, that kind of gives you a look at how we're building videos on the back end. And each video, say a 10-minute video, is probably going to take anywhere from 20 to 25 hours to put together. Now, I was laughing at Lexi because she thought being behind the camera was the easy part, right? You just turn on the camera, you start talking, and it's over. 10-minute video takes you 10 minutes to record, right? Once she actually saw that last night, she started working on it, about 7 p.m. And this is just the video portion. She was done by about 10:30, so 3.5 hours to record 16 minutes of video. And then we worked on it till about 2:30 a.m. just doing the cuts and adding the pictures and some of the stuff that she already had. Now, I would say 2 days before we started talking about her doing it, she was doing the research and she was very passionate about the Ruby Franke case because she had come across the channel back in 2015, I think it was. And I don't want to put words in her mouth. I'll let her answer some of the comments down below. And she was passionate about some of the research, and she was telling me like, hey, I remember this video from 2018 or 2019, and I thought this was pretty crazy. So I told her to put it in a video, and then I talked her into being, on camera. Ultimately, my passion is to do stuff behind the scenes. I love doing the editing. I would love to have more time to do editing so I could bring better edited videos to you folks. I love working on the room, microphones, cameras, technical stuff. That's what I went to school for many years ago. And for me, it would be a lot of fun if Lexi would start doing more videos because I could work on the back end. I'll still bring videos as well, but we wanted to test it out and see if we worked on it together, how much could we grow the channel together. So that's some of the stuff behind it. And it would bring more content to you being part of the community, right? And we'll test it out. We'll see what the community says. The community usually leaves pretty good feedback. And, if it becomes too confusing having two people hosting, then we'll cut it back down to one and maybe have Lexi go on her own individual one, which ultimately would be the goal at some point. So the reason why I bring all of this up before Amie Harwick is I haven't done a lot of research into this case. Now, I do know some of the things that have gone on in this case, but a lot of the high level stuff, right? So what do I know about Amie Harwick? And this is starting from ground zero. I want to do a video on Amie. I'll probably wait until the trial's over just so we can say what the verdict is. But basically, here's what I know. The basics. She dated Drew Carey. She was engaged to him at some point in 2018. That made her really famous. She's a sex therapist, so a lot of people are interested just on that alone. Essentially, she falls off the balcony. Now, in court, this is what's really being argued is, was she pushed off by her ex-boyfriend or did she fall off? There's a lot of things that are going on in court right now, like she was being stalked by her ex-boyfriend. And the last thing I heard on Friday when I was looking at it, and this is what kind of interests me, was that the ex-boyfriend was at her apartment or her condo and was in there for a few hours before she got home. And ultimately, we think that he pushed her off of the balcony. Now, everything's really pointing his way, like it does in a lot of these cases. Let's just be honest. If they're arrested, that usually means the evidence is going to be pointing their way. Doesn't mean they're guilty, right? Sometimes the evidence just points that way. But that's basically the framework that I have for this case so far. Based off of that, I haven't done much research, so you're not going to see a video come out tomorrow or even this week because I'm going to spend probably 10 to 15 hours working on doing research on this case. Now, where I'll start is with Amie herself. So I'll just look up and I'll start with Wikipedia. Now, I do know that Wikipedia is not always right, and everything you read on the internet is not always right, okay? Then I'll start working through what do I think is very important to add into a video and what do I think might not be as important. Doesn't mean it's not important. It means usually you as the viewer and part of the community can come in and say, hey, Tim, you were off base on this one. You missed some of this stuff. And that's where I appreciate the engagement because I do want to go back and forth. And then it makes me go re-look at this case. Keep in mind, I'm doing 2 to 3 cases a week, plus I'm working a full-time job, and I typically drive 3,000 miles a month. So if that gives you any perspective of how much I'm out in the field, I'm visiting stores. I have to be very efficient with my time. I also make sure that I spend a lot of time with the dogs and I'm walking them every day and then do a lot of exercise stuff. So that all being said, I've got to be very efficient with my time. So I have to do what I can to get as much research. So sometimes I do miss stuff, and sometimes I am human, and I do like that the community points that out. I especially like when people say, I'm not trying to be negative. Believe me, if you're leaving feedback and you're engaged, that's not negative at all. That to me is, as a content creator, I couldn't ask for anything more, because you as an engaged community member, you're ultimately helping my channel. And we don't always have to agree. That's the beauty of it. Somebody might write something that I don't agree with, and I will put my perspective, and as long as we're adults and we can agree to disagree, it's okay to have your point. I like having different perspectives. I think that's what a community should be, and I think that I'm definitely not always right. I'm wrong probably 100 times a day, so why not have that as part of the community? So when I make my videos, I try to leave them open to a certain extent where it gives that room for people to feel safe in our community, to be able to come out and say, okay, I have a different perspective on this, or there's something that you missed. And I hope that when I type things out, even if I'm stern in my stance, that it comes across as respectful and thankful that somebody has left a comment or has left a different perspective, even if I don't agree with it. So that is all the thoughts that I have going into a video. So now what I do, and hopefully you can see this, is I will come up with different ideas on what I'm going to work with, right? So I've got two things going on here. I'll move this off of the screen. This is my LinkedIn stuff that I'm working on. And then, because I do a lot of LinkedIn stuff. And then here is some of the videos that I have coming up, right? Chris Cornell, the conspiracy of Chris Cornell. I want to work on that. Haven't got to that. That's been on my list for quite some time. Here's some of the crime ideas that I have that I want to work on. Amie Harwick being my next one. And then some of the bigger cases like Chris Watts, which, you know, that's going to be one that's going to require a lot of resources. I want to get a lot of clips in there, and I have a pretty good idea of what the framework's going to look like in that. And then the last one, just some safety stuff in Mexico. Now, what I'll do with Amie Harwick is I'll start looking at like intro, and then who is Amie, suspect, background, case, and then maybe verdict, right? And then essentially like an outro. So based off of that, I can go through and I can look at some of the stuff. Now, this is a working list. So think of this as just a framework of the video. So the idea is I want to get the information across in a way that would make sense to me. That doesn't always make sense to all the viewers. And I really want to hold the viewer as long as possible and hold the community in. Now, again, for YouTube to continue to put my videos out, I've got to hold the viewer from 5 to 6 minutes. And the other thing is, when I go through and I do a lot of research on YouTube, YouTube really prefers 8 to 10 minute videos. Now, my community has asked for longer videos, so that's why you see some of my videos have now gotten to 16, 17, 18 minutes, because I don't have to cut as much information as I was prior to try to get as much information into that 8 or 10 minute video. Now, what I do find, the longer the videos, they typically don't get out quite as much, and until I build a big enough community, that's going to continue to happen. So we'll go from having videos that do like 4,100 or 4,200 views, and keep in mind, that's my biggest video, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500. These are all real good for a small channel, and that's all done because of you folks being very engaged in those videos, but they're typically a little bit smaller in length. So I keep all of that in mind when I'm putting these together, but I do also keep in mind this is a passion project. I went to school for video editing. I love true crime. I'm able to put these two together. I don't get paid for this, and I'm not monetized. The dream is to become monetized one day, but even at 1,000 subs and being monetized, that's very little income that's coming in, but that is income that we can put back into the channel at some point. And the dream is within 5 years, we would like to be big enough that this does take over the full-time job. And just to be honest, at that point, I would start hiring people to do thumbnails. I would hire people to essentially be the talent, you know, or have Lexi, if she wants to do it, you know, become the talent. And then I could really focus on the video editing and do the passion stuff, right? Love video editing, love editing audio, and it would give me a lot more time to bring a more quality product. So that all being said, and I know I went off on a tangent, I'll start looking at some of the information. So this is your cue if you're in chat. What do you know about Amie Harwick? And what pieces of information would you like to see in a video? The other thing is I like to add some of my opinion and open it up. So I haven't read much, so I can't write my opinion in here now. But overall, I would put like, what is my opinion? What do I think? What do I think is going to be important? That will be overarching. I'll keep that in mind for everything that I do. Okay? So very, very on purpose. So then I'll start out with just reading Wikipedia. So I'll go in, I'll read this whole thing. I'm not going to do it all with you because you'll get very bored, but I'll read this and then I'll go away from it for a while. Then I'll come back and I'll read it again just so that way it can sink in, and then I can start putting together what I think happened in the case and start visualizing it, right? So basically I'll be like, okay, where did she grow up? What did she do? And then I'll start kind of putting Amie in my mind, where I'll start thinking throughout the day while I'm doing research of, who is Amie Harwick? Can I tell her story properly? Am I going to get things wrong? I probably will. How can I get it across the best that I can for both the viewer, but also to honor her memory in this case because she has passed away, and do it in a way that is going to essentially have the least amount of bias in it, right? So I'll look at it. What's going to really draw in the viewer is obviously Drew Carey, because most people know who Drew Carey is. So I will make a segment on that and talk about that, and then probably put some clips in on that. And that is intended to try to hold the viewer in longer, so that way when I get to my portion and my opinion, then you can see where I got to that. But that also says, hey, we got some facts in there. Now let's listen to what Tim has to say from an opinion standpoint. This will be the bread and butter right here, because this is synopsis, right? This is pretty low, pretty small. So I'll just read this one out word for word, and then I'll put that in my mind. This won't be the ultimate research, but this will just get me thinking about it. So on February 15th, 2020, Harwick was found under the balcony of her Los Angeles home and died after being taken to the hospital. The initial investigation found that she had been strangled and thrown from the third floor after a fight. The suspect, ex-boyfriend Gareth Pursehouse, against whom she had twice filed restraining orders, was arrested the next day and was charged for murder with a special circumstance of lying in wait, breaking and entering, and home burglary. He was released under a $2 million bail bond, then rearrested after pleading not guilty on April 16, 2020. His preliminary hearing date has been rescheduled several times since June 2020. As of August 2023, it was set to August 21st, 2023. So based off of that, now, before I do anything else, I'm going to let that sink in probably for the rest of the day to kind of think through some of the infrastructure that I've got and what does that case look like. So once I do that, I will start looking at some other stories. So like you'll see News Nation, you'll see CNN, you'll see Fox. They'll have all of their stuff. I'll see some videos from the trial. I'll go watch a lot of that stuff, and I'll spend probably 10 or 15 hours on that. Then I will come back and then start filling this out. And some of it might change at that point, but I'll fill that out, and then I'll start recording. Just like I said with Lexi, I'll usually get 30 to 35 minutes or so of recording stuff, and then I'll start cutting, adding clips, that kind of stuff. And then ultimately, it ends up being a video. So you'll see like I have videos queued up, and then we'll have like the launch day of our videos. So that's basically the behind the scenes stuff with some of the videos. You'll see like I'll work on thumbnails. So this is me working on a thumbnail. We did a couple of different thumbnails for Lexi last night. And then we have constant stuff going on all the time. So that basically gives you some background on what's going on with Amie Harwick. I think it's an interesting case for a couple of different reasons. Obviously the Drew Carey piece that's coming in, that's been stated a lot in the media. I haven't had a lot of time to watch the case because I was watching the Henry Dinkins case. So I couldn't watch both cases, especially for how much I work and how much time we've been spending on the YouTube channel. So now I'm going to have to go back and try to catch up because I'm not watching the Henry Dinkins case anymore, and I've gotten a lot of video outs the last 2 weeks. But I am out of town this week quite a bit for work. So I assume that we'll probably release a video on Wednesday. And then now that Lexi's a little bit more involved, and I've seen some of the research that she's done, I'll probably have her work on this video and do some of the research. Now, if I can get her to do another video, that would be pretty cool, because we want to make sure that she gets through 10 or 15 videos just to get a little bit more comfortable. But that's ultimately what we'll do to bring you folks our Amie Harwick video. And in turn, we've got a couple of videos that are already queued up that we've already worked on for this week coming up. So that being said, I know that was kind of long. Hopefully we give you a good insight of what's going on. I'm going to try to get the dogs in here so you can see the dogs. I know a few people have asked. I don't know if they'll come, but let's ask them. Lulu, come here, Ruru. Come on, baby. Okay, here comes the Dobie. So we'll get to see the Dobie, hopefully. Look up here. Come on. Oh, there's the Dobie. Max, come here. Up, up. Lulu, come here, baby. Lou. Max, leave her. Come here, baby girl. All right, I don't know if you can see the Ruru. There's our German Shepherd. And then there's Max. And he is very, I should go get a drink at Dav 4 after. Actually, I don't know if I will, because I have my secret sauce here. But I appreciate it. But those are the two dogs. The Dobie, you just saw the Wime come in. He is very social, by the way. The Wime's probably the most social, but when we are in here, he really likes to listen to the stream and help the video editing, which is pretty cool. I don't know if he'll say hi. If I had a treat, he probably would. Huh, Coop? You want to say hi? Cooper, say hi? I will say that, again, I will leave you with this. Queen Bee had said that we were Wime enablers, and Lexi loved that, by the way. She's like, we are Wime enablers. So those are definitely the babies. I will be taking them for a walk here probably in about 20 minutes before it gets hot out. It's nice because the weather's kind of cooling off a little bit, but we do spend a lot of time with the puppies, and especially with the Dobie, he has been hurting my knee quite a bit. He is, I think, 95 pounds now. He'll probably end up 110 pounds or so, and he just doesn't know how not to pull yet, so we've tried everything with him. But we are going to hire a babysitter for him at some point to help out during the day. But that all being said, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Hopefully there was some insight on how we do stuff. I know it probably got a little boring at the end there, but if there's anything you want to see or any ideas on videos that you folks want to see, let me know. That being said, I'm your host, Tim Solberg. Go check out Lexi's video. It's her first one. Leave her a comment, good, bad, or indifferent. She'll take it with stride, and then we'll have her make a couple more videos with the upcoming weeks. So everybody have a wonderful weekend. I will see you back here next week.